I'm Ellie, and I would like to confess something. I don't expect that I'll feel better after this, and to be honest, I don't deserve it anyway, but maybe at least I can prevent somebody else from repeating my mistakes. Everything started on the first day of my junior year in high school. I was happy to finally see my classmates and friends again after a long summer vacation. I guess I could say that I was pretty popular because I had a lot of friends. During my lunch break, I spotted a new guy in the schoolyard. Well, it was hard not to notice him. Tall, messy blonde hair, and with a cane. I remember that moment I thought to myself, what a nice-looking guy. Too bad he has to walk around with that stick. I asked my friends about him, and they said he wasn't a new student. It turns out he had studied at home for the last 2 years because of a serious bone fracture. Apparently, he had started to feel better and returned to school. His name was Nate, they said. Days, weeks, and even months flew by, but for some reason, I couldn't get Nate out of my head. Not for a single day. And from the way he looked at me whenever he crossed my path, I knew he was thinking about me too. There was something very special about Nate, something that distinguished him from the rest of the guys who would fool around during the breaks between classes. He would normally just sit with a book or do his homework. I admired his maturity, but I couldn't understand why he didn't try to approach me. After all, he wasn't all that shy, at least not on the surface. Sometimes I'd imagine that we'd somehow collide in the school hallway, and following the best traditions of silly romantic comedies, I would drop a book and we would simultaneously reach out for it and our hands would touch, and then, well, actually, everything turned out even better. One of our friends had a huge birthday party. Nate and I were among those invited. Shortly after the party started, some guests gathered around the birthday girl in the living room, while others were playing board games in the kitchen. But I went to the balcony to get some fresh air because it was too stuffy inside, and the music was a little too loud. Nate must have noticed my disappearance and soon came to the balcony too. Surprisingly, there was no one else there, just me and him. We exchanged a few phrases, and then an awkward pause hung between us. I turned to Nate and realized we were so close that our lips almost touched. He didn't miss this opportunity and kissed me. And that night we started dating. I was thrilled. On the next day, I told my friends about Nate and I didn't expect the reaction I got. They started telling me that I had made a mistake and I shouldn't be dating him. I tried to convince them that Nate was such a kind and lovable person, but they wouldn't listen. They kept insisting that dating a disabled person was extremely tough and that I deserved something better. Of course, I didn't change my mind overnight, but the worst thing was that I started questioning my feelings toward Nate. On the one hand, we were increasingly becoming attached to each other in just over a week. On the other hand, my friends were increasingly putting more pressure on me, trying to force me to break up with Nate. They would talk to me about it in school, text me on the way home, and even call me in the evening. It was too much to handle. I was weak and Nate wasn't. I genuinely respected him for the way he coped with his ailment. I never heard Nate complain about his injured leg or ask for help. In fact, I believe he would never have accepted help from anybody, even if he might need it. You know, Nate never showed his weaknesses. So, when I finally got the courage and told him we needed to break up, he looked absolutely normal and didn't even ask me why, just smiled sadly and walked away. My friends were happy for me, but I don't think I was happy. One day, Nate didn't show up at school and I got worried. I called and texted him several times, but he didn't answer. I asked his friends if they had seen him, but none of them had. About an hour later, the principal came into our class. He looked devastated. It was clear something terrible had happened. My heart sank, but I was trying to drive away the bad thoughts. After a short pause, the principal told us, with a trembling voice, that this morning, Nathan Moore, a student from our school, was hit by a pickup truck while crossing the road. Death was instantaneous. After these words, I felt like the whole world caved in on top of me. The principal kept saying something, but I didn't hear a word. I only saw his mouth moving silently. Suddenly, things started getting really blurry, and then I blacked out. Nate was buried the next day, but I didn't go to the cemetery because I knew my heart wouldn't be able to stand it. The principal freed me from classes for a week, But not a week later, not even a year later, did the pain and the feeling of loss go away. Will it ever? I don't know. I can't find the words to express how much I regret breaking up with Nate. Why didn't I protect our relationship from my so-called friends? How could I do something like this to a person I loved? Would he still be alive if I didn't act so foolish? I don't know. But I encourage everyone out there to fight for the one you love and to not listen to what others are saying. What would you have done if you were in my place? Let me know by leaving a comment below. Don't forget to like the video if this story moved you, and press the subscribe button to stay tuned if you haven't already. And thank you for paying attention to this story.